Hello and welcome. I've been gone for a while. Welcome to the Priscilla Winkle Show. It's so great to have you join me today. Welcome back tonight. I mean, it has been what an interesting week and time period here in the UK. There's the whole royal family, Meghan Markle and Harry saga. And of course, we had the budget this week. And not to mention what that meant for the nurses. And we are going to have a conversation about racism. So, in the meantime, I would very much appreciate it if you would subscribe, like, and share. Welcome to the show. Hiya, welcome back. Thank you for staying with me. So, as I said at the top of the show, today my conversation is going to be about what's happening with the budget. How does that affect us here in the UK? The almighty royal family saga, Harry and Meghan, and of course racism, which has been brought back to the fore once again in our conversation here in the UK. So, first up, let's have a conversation about that budget. But before I do that, please do remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for doing that. So the budget was announced last week. After the whole Corona year of 2020, we've all been looking forward to what our Chancellor was going to be able to tell us. And of course, there was a huge announcement on the surface of things, it seemed like a great budget, but then you need to read between the fine lines in order to find out how it really affects you, affects myself, and what it will mean for our economy. So what I am going to do is I'm not going to go into too much detail today. I'm just going to give you highlights. But then next week when I come back, I will, try and give it a proper breakdown because I think there's another story that probably needs a bit more of my time today. So what we've had with the budget is that it's quite an interesting budget. 65 billion for COVID support. We've had that happening. The COVID-19 situation has not gone away. It's still very much in our fall. Furlough has been extended until September. But the plan is that as we have the gradual release, as I say, I use the word release. I use that word kindly because I say that we're in prison, as it were. So as we're gradually released, we're going back to work, going back to school. The children went back to school on the 8th of March, which was just a couple of days ago. So as we begin to go back and the shops begin to open, the different aspects of our society begins to open up, it's expected that that will reduce the number of people that are on furlough. However, from July, employers are expected to pay a bit more. So currently, furlough is 80%, but that's subject to reduction when we come to July. The other aspect of this budget that was quite hard hitting. I mean, naturally, with everything that's happened, our economy has slowed down. It's quite a challenge. We're in no doubt about that. And so the whole idea is how do we kickstart the economy? And that means we're going to, see some cuts in some areas. The cuts it's going to be something like 4 billion a year. That's going to, according to the Office of Budget Responsibility, we're going to be seeing those cuts gradually coming in. We're going to be paying more taxes. So our taxes are, to the tune of something like 8 billion when we all get back to our jobs. And, some may find a new job, some may no longer have a job. But when you get back there, just be aware that, get ready, we're going to pay more taxes. And a lot of people will say it's probably needed. So, be aware of that. And then there's going to be one of the other areas of cuts that is quite hard hitting, I think, and I'm sure that some of you out there will agree with me. The NHS. The NHS is going to see a reduction, something in the region of 10 billion in their spending, and obviously. But then, the government are arguing that, but we've been pumping money into the NHS during the Corona year, and so But then when you consider that we're not completely out of the woods, and there are so many areas within that have been been neglected somewhat because of the onset of COVID and the impact of COVID, then you begin to wonder, well, what will it mean with these cuts? But and these cuts are going to hit some frontline services. But I think one of the biggest frontline services that we've seen so far, where the cuts are concerned, is our nurses, our frontline workers. Nurses are only going to receive just a 1% pay rise. What does that mean? A 1% pay rise equates. I've seen some nurses post, that it's going to be like £3.50 extra a week in their wages. I mean, that's just when you think about that and you think of what they've all been through, during this COVID era. And not only that, the fact that, we've seen government spending, we've seen contracts that have been given out, we've seen so many things that have happened, which has meant an increase for some. But, you would have expected, I think the natural expectation was that our frontline workers were going to, they would be treated better. So this comes quite, as quite a kick in the teeth for them, really, considering what they've been through, what they've had to deal with. But then the other issue here that's also playing a role is that it's a whole Brexit contention. We're out of the EU. What does that mean? I'm going to come back on that next week, hopefully, so that I can give you, a better breakdown of what that means and how that is affecting our lives. As it is, I'll give you a hint. One of the things that we've seen the government do, for instance, is, and I'm going to post some links to that, down below when I'm done. The government are telling us, no, I'm not saying that right. So the government are paying newspapers, by the way, they're taking out advertising to say that so far the Brexit departure has not affected us that badly. For them to go to that length, what does it mean? There's a whole concern about food shortage. At the very beginning, we saw the impact of that really on our borders. That was just, it was even made worse by the new COVID strain that was discovered at the time. So when you put all of these things together, it just is a melting pot of seeming challenges. But I am very sure that we're going to get through it one way or another. We'll work our way out of it, and hopefully we'll be able to pull through. We're going to just have to do that now. So that's all I'm going to put out there on the budget so far, and of course my brief touchdown on Brexit. But like I said, I'll be back next week to look more into that, into those two areas, and we'll talk more. But I think it was very hard hitting for the nurses. So there's a lot going on at the moment, but I will come back with an update on that. Now the story of the century, the drama of the century. And that is the whole Harry and Meghan interview with Oprah. My goodness. The interview is not a tragedy, but I think the whole situation is a tragedy. What we've had to see has culminated into a terrible tragedy for the royal family and for every member involved, in truth. That's what I think. So let's start from the top. So we all know that back in 2018, Harry and Meghan got married. We soon discovered that there were issues. For the vast majority of us here in the United Kingdom, we were seeing things in the newspapers that it was interesting to say the least. But what was clear was that Meghan was receiving a higher volume of articles being written about her in comparison to other members of the royal family, especially other female or wives that have come into the royal family. Let me just say this: writing articles about the members of the royal family or negative articles about the members of the royal family are not new, and they're not, so it's not as though it was uniquely happening to her. But I think what the issue was, in particular to her, was that she had the volume of articles in some newspapers in one day. They could write up to 20, 30 articles, one publication, and they're all doing it. Just think about, what the volume of articles that were being written. She could have, anything up to 20, 30, 15, 10 being written in different publications. But the sad aspect of this was that what was being written was not necessarily the truth. So that was one thing. And then anyway, so that was happening. But in 2019, we began to hear that they were likely to move to Africa. They may not be staying, and so on. And then of course, their son came along, and by early 2020, it became apparent that they were no longer going to be living as or working as working members of the senior members of the royal family, senior working members of the royal family, but that they were going to be going to Canada. And we saw the whole drama that came with that. But I think what was even more sad was that primary outcome that we saw then. It was quite sad to see that Harry, so many things were being taken away from Harry. Some of his, his charities, his causes that he was representing, and so on. And some things were being taken away from him. His title, he can't be referred to as His Royal Highness, and neither could the Duchess of Sussex. So the Duke and Duchess left us, and it was quite sad to see them go. But what then proceeded? Wow. The negative articles continued. The newspaper stories, didn't stop. The headlines, But what was interesting was that their departure seemed to have generated for them, their popularity was just simply amazing. All they have to literally do is cough all the way in Los Angeles, and it would just override every other news item here in the UK. It will, be the lead story. But we began to learn about, what they were, some of the issues that were happening. But we didn't see the palace do anything. The palace just kept silent. In the midst of this, we did see other members of the family having issues. There is a whole allegation concerning Prince Andrew, where he's required to go and speak to the FBI, on some allegations, and he hasn't attended. But the palace were quick to put out a statement in his defense, for one thing. We also saw that the Duchess of Cambridge also had articles that were written about her that were somewhat unpleasant. Again, the palace were out to defend her, but they were never out to defend the Duchess of Sussex. Most people, other people's opinions are that, oh, but she knew what she was getting into. What was the big deal? And, all of that. But, what we've seen now suggests otherwise. So they never defended her. They were over in the US, as we all know. And everything she did was ripped to shreds. We watched as, royal reporters, royal commentators will, take the podium on our TV screens on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, presenters. I'm not going to name one in particular, but he knows himself. And I think most of us do too. On a daily basis, we'll get on screen and literally rip this woman to shreds. There was nothing that she could do that was right. If she ate a simple avocado, it was linked to violence and, criminals and so on. So the long and short of it is, so let's come down to, the Oprah interview, the announcement of the Oprah interview. I mean, that whole week leading up to the interview was just ridiculous. There was allegations of bullying that just suddenly, came back up. Allegations she was alleged to have bullied a member of staff. That story was somewhat wonky, for want of a better description. And then there was also the whole idea, uproar about the earrings that she wore that was given to her by the Saudi prince. But then every other member of the family have had interaction with the Saudi royal family, and the country itself, the United Kingdom. We sell arms to Saudi Arabia, but then we're in uproar about Meghan Markle. because she wore an earring that was given to her, that was not handed to her, though it was given to her as a gift, but it was actually presented, and it is part of crown jewelry. So she doesn't get to keep it personally. It becomes part of the jewelry of the crown. So, but anyway, there was a whole hullabaloo about that fact. So, the Oprah interview. In that interview, we learned that they wanted to change the law concerning her son Archie. They discussed the fact that, according to Harry and Meghan, members of the family discussed the color of the baby's skin, what they thought it would look like. I mean, Meghan Markle, when you look at Meghan Markle, she would have to tell you that she actually is of mixed heritage, that she's, biracial. For most of us who are this tone and of this race, we do not automatically note that she is biracial. But I tell you what is so heartbreaking is the fact that society denies her. Society refuses to recognize mixed race people's heritage as it stands. And for those of us who are not mixed race, it may not make sense. But when you speak to somebody who is of mixed race, it's such a painful thing that we deny them of of both sides of their heritage. They're referred to as being Black when in fact they are not. And that's primarily because their Black side, their heritage on the Black side, they embrace them more and welcome them more. You will find that most mixed race people actually endure racism in their own family, because you've got one part of the family that don't necessarily accept them, and they some are so blatant about it, quite rude, and some are, they like to do it undercover, pretentious. So I think we should be kinder to mixed race people, because they're going through enough as it is just by being born. And that is what we saw with Meghan Markle. That conversation being had about the likely skin tone of her son. And as I said earlier, you cannot tell that she is of mixed heritage. And it means that when she has a child with a Caucasian man or person, that child is not going to look like, it would take a whole lot for the melanin in the skin to pop up. That child, believe it or not, is going to spend his entire existence trying to convince the people of the Black race, as it were, that he does have that drop of Black in him. These are the things that we don't think about sometimes when we hit at these people. Well, anyway, so that question was asked, which raised the issue of racism within the royal family. She also spoke about the impact of all of these things on her mental health. A lot of people are questioning if she's truly telling the truth about her mental health, and a lot of people are saying, yeah, right. But I will say this to everybody who's daring to question: suicide is not a visible problem. It is not a problem that you can identify. You can look at a person who's suicidal and know that, oh, that person is suicidal. No, it doesn't announce itself. You only get to know when it's happened. And everybody begins to question. For most people, we begin to question, when did this happen? Where were we? How comes we didn't see the signs? So I will, say to those of us that are watching, any of you that are watching and you're thinking, yeah, she's just making it up. Please be kind. She's not making it up. If you haven't been there, you don't know. I say this, and I say it with confidence because I've been there. And I know other people that have been there. And I know when you hear their stories, when you hear what they went through, the vast majority of the people around them didn't know. Vast majority of the people around them had no idea what was going on, and unless they tell you what's going on, you will not know. So let's be kind on that note. Now, they wanted to change the law concerning the baby so that the baby will not be known as a prince. The law, which she mentioned, says that the grandchildren of the sovereign will be addressed as a prince, and thus Harry is a prince. But Archie will not be a prince. Wow, that's that whole conversation has that has exploded into something else. Now, here's the thing. Whilst this is something that has been going on since 2018, and whilst it's been going since her arrival, I should say, actually, because she's had death threats, she's had very terrible press targeted at her to the point that her then boyfriend, now husband, now father of her son, had to put out statements at those different stages to say, please be kind. She's a human being. Now, for the vast majority, if you're not in that bubble, experiencing something like that, you just don't understand the magnitude of its impact. You just think, oh, somebody's making noise. But it's caused an uproar whilst it was happening, and nobody defended her. When I say nobody, neither the institution, as it were, or members of the royal family did anything. They literally quite sort of sat back and just folded their arms and just watched her as she was trying to fight her way through it, or trying to make it through each day. And what this has done is that it's drawn the world's attention. It's caused everybody to question what is going on here. It's drawn attention to not just the situation in itself, but it's also drawn attention to the royal family. And, we could defend the royal family, and say, well, we can say, oh, you can't blame the queen. You have to excuse the queen, which is what we've seen a lot of. Nobody wants to upset the queen. Nobody wants to offend the queen. Nobody wants to, and rightly so. But what is the reality? That's the question. What is the reality of this situation? Now, this racism aspect of things, let me explain. I need to break this down, and I hope, I will do justice to this. And I'm going to, and before I do that, let me say something about the royal family. Harry said something in that interview. He said, my brother is trapped. My father is trapped. They are trapped, and I have a lot of compassion for them. And he said, I was also trapped. But now, through Meghan, I'm set free. Here's the thing. If you've ever watched The Crown, there's no doubt parts of it is fiction, but parts of it I recognize because I lived through it. And so, if you've ever watched The Crown, my conclusions after I watched The Crowns with us, I watched The Crown and I was saddened. I was so sad because it dawned on me, it became apparent to me that every member of that family, every member of the royal family is a sacrifice to the throne. I know that just, I'm going to break it down. Every member of that family is a sacrifice to the throne, including the sovereign. The moment you are born, you don't have an identity as an individual. You're not allowed to think for yourself. You can't desire a career, not in the UK royal family. It's not really a big deal if you don't get an education. You don't have aspirations. But the key thing is, the most important thing is, you must not shine more than the sovereign. But you can't control that. You can't, it's amazing. These are things that they have no control over. And so you've got members of this family that grow, they can't be who they are. They can't really express because, they should keep quiet. But they live in enormous privilege. Harry's learning some things right now, for instance. He's having to learn how to spend money. Because you see from the interview with, he makes mention of it on that interview with James Corden, where he says, I don't carry money. But now he's having, because in his world, ever since he was born, whatever he's ever needed or wanted was brought to him. He's never had to say, "Oh, this cost £100. Let me pay for it." No, he's never had to wonder whether he had enough money for something, like most of us do. He's never had to budget for anything. It just all comes. So you just think about that for a moment. When you're born into, most of us are born and want to be lawyers, want to be doctors. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a this. I want to be a that. For them, if they're lucky, they get sent into the military. That's if they're men. The women don't. And in the military, they're also limited because they have to be protected. So you consider that kind of life. That's their life over there. So that's problematic. So they're not engaging with a lot of things, and they don't actually understand the various dynamics that you and I may understand. The life dynamics. They're just living this life of opulence. Oh, by the way, they are taught in the process that they're literally living for the adulation of the subjects. So they believe that we're all going to love them regardless. We're all going to show up and wave and at them. We're all going to be so happy to see them every time they show up to cut ribbons and wave hands. They don't realize that that's actually not the case in reality. So you can see that their concerns are somewhat different to the ones that we have. So asking that question about what's the color of the skin going to be like, it's like, oh my god, that one drop, how badly is it going to pollute us, kind of thing. And it's yeah, so that's that. So coming on to the racism thing, I say this so frequently all the time, most especially when I have people, sort of, if you, okay, who's the biggest racist character I should think of? Okay, Trump. Trump is the biggest racist character, right? So, somebody would say to me, yeah, but the man's racist. I said, every white person is racist. Yes, I said it. And let me explain. I don't mean that in a bad way. You see, every white person is racist in the sense that we come into this life, and every single one of us alive today are living on a construct that is not of our own doing. There are some people that have propelled that construct and, for it to continue. But the vast majority of us are not even aware of this construct. And that goes for the vast majority of white people. They do not know that the world we live in is constructed with a negative narrative that teaches them to hate, devalue, and dislike somebody that looks like me. And so you find that, because they're brought up on it, we're all brought up on it. What it does, and let me explain that. What it does is that for the white person, they generate the hate. They're not even aware that they're generating the hate. That's the saddest aspect of it. For we as people of African descent, what we do is we also generate hate and prejudice towards each other. So, it's built up in all of us because we're all hearing the same thing at the same time. We're all hearing black is bad, white is good. And so for the white people, most of them will say, but I'm not racist. Here in the United Kingdom, the word racist is worse than the act of racism. It's amazing. And a lot of people, we've turned racism into such a dirty word that the moment you mention it, oh my goodness, everybody is like freaked out. I'm not racist. People get scared. People get worried. Why would you call me racist? I don't hate you. So let me explain how that actually works. You may not hate me, or you may not realize you hate me. You may not realize you dislike me until we get to the point of exchange. So if I go for a job, for instance, I apply for a position, myself and another Caucasian female of the same, we have of equal everything, same age, same height, same build, qualifications. Maybe I may have more merits, or she may have more merits, whatever it may be. But let's just say, for argument's sake, we go for this position, and the person that is assessing us is a non-racist person. But what tends to happen is I may be the better candidate. Maybe I have more experience. Perhaps it's a job that concerns my community, even. And I will have much more understanding because I've worked more in the community. But then at the end of the day, that position, that job is going to be given to a person that is white, not because they have the same qualification as I do, but more to do with the fact that, the skin tone. And it's at that point of exchange for me, as I keep saying, is where racism takes place. You've made a decision not based on the merits. You've made a decision not based on my capacity, capabilities, nothing. You've just made it on the basis of I don't look like you. We're okay, we joke, we laugh, we play. When we come to the point of exchange, that's when you will remember that I don't look like you. And you will take something away from me because I don't look like you. When I do exactly the same thing that a fellow white person does, because you have been taught that I'm aggressive, because you've been taught that I'm rude, and I don't have the same values, or I don't have values. You will instantly identify what I've done, um, gravely, if I can use that word. You're going to then look at it as, she's rude, or she was aggressive, or she had an attitude. But I've done exactly the same thing as a white person. The only reason why you've come to that conclusion is because of what you've been taught, how you've been taught to view me, how you've been taught to represent, how I have been represented to you. So, if you look at some of the adverts we're watching at the moment, we don't represent somebody that looks like me in a positive. There's inclusion, yeah, because we're all appearing on the screen, but we're not represented in those high positions. We're not represented as the doctors. We're not represented as the lawyers. We're not represented as the CEO, the business owner. But you're going to find us doing the KFC adverts. You're going to find us doing the postman adverts. You're going to find us doing those kind of things. And it's all of that, when you pull it together, if you can understand it, is where racism occurs. So, the palace, those who work within the palace, those who work within the institution, they probably don't even realize what they're doing. Vast majority of people doing it don't realize. But let me say this: when somebody brings it up, don't get angry. Rather than get angry about it, learn, ask, what did I do wrong? How could I have improved it? Because it will help. Rather than sort of get defensive and get angry, because that way we're never going to learn. But so that's what we've seen, and it's, I mean, that accusation of the them wanting to change the law, and asking those kind of questions concerning the baby, I mean, it's devastating for me. It's devastating for a lot of people like me. And the reason why it is because, don't get me wrong, that's not because we're not aware of the racism. That's not because we're not, the expectation's not there for it, because it is to an extent. But I think where it's a problem is because the Queen is the head of the Commonwealth. We are in 2021. We have seen issues with the palace play out with Harry's mother. And at that time, we were told that they have learned their lessons. So you naturally expect that when new members of the family are coming in, that there will be a protocol that trains and takes them through the system so as to avoid some of the challenges and some of the things that we heard happened. But according to what we learned from this interview, that didn't take place. And we are also, that didn't happen for the Duchess of Sussex. And not only did it not happen, but the fact that they didn't defend her, that sent a message to, everybody of my skin tone that lives in this country, that's a British citizen, that listen, we don't see you, we don't recognize you, we haven't changed towards you. But then you're head of the Commonwealth. And the vast majority of those countries, over 50 countries, the vast majority, about 50 or so, are countries that have people like me that live in those countries. What are you saying to the Commonwealth? It's not sufficient for, You see, the palace reacted. The Sunday in the Sunday Times newspaper, there was an article that said, asked the question, "Is the palace racist?" It can't be because it has. The response to the question was, "It can't be because it has a robust, robust diversity policy." No, robust diversity policy may work for you as a Caucasian. We know that doesn't mean anything. Racism, you're not being racist is not because you say you're not racist. It's in your actions. We can tell. Is it the microaggressions that you send towards us? Is it the blatant decisions that you make? Is it the blatant choices, or when you deny us of things, in our faces? Those are the times that the racism takes place. So when you say we have a robust diversity policy, it's like we just think, okay. And then when you come out, what we saw immediately after the interview, we saw Prince Charles in a black church, the biggest black church in the United Kingdom, had, or I should say one of, had Prince Charles go to the church, and we all saw it. No, that's not you not being racist. That's not, I know you mean well. I know it was intended to create some form of cohesion and all of that, but it doesn't take away from what the realities or the truth is, or the situation, or as we view it. So we need to do a lot more than that. The palace needs to do more. So I need to, kind of wrap up because I've been rambling for a while here. But let me say this regarding this situation. The question really is, was the palace complicit? When I say the palace, the institution. It's one thing for the institution to be complicit in the situation, which I think if you just take it for face value, which is that these attacks and abuses, they went on week after week, daily. It wasn't as though there was a pause. There was no pause. It went on daily, week after week after week after week, day after day, continuously. Even the weekends, we saw it. And the palace did not say anything, unlike when they will for other members of the family. So that's one. And then I asked myself I asked the question, do we not have any mature people in the palace? And I'm not saying that in any disrespectful way. I'm saying that because of my African tradition, in the sense that when something is happening, the elders will call, when we marry, the elders will call everybody together, the families will come together, and they will just switch off the buttons, as it were. They'll say, this is going to stop now. We're going to agree how to move forward. This matter is going to be resolved, and they will deal with it. So I kept on wondering, well, okay, the institution are not doing it, but what about members of the family? Can they not say anything? Can they not? They don't need to come out and say it. They have enough power to, do it underground, and we will see it if they don't want to publicly do it. But they did nothing. They did nothing. So for a lot of people watching, yes, the palace was complicit. They could have done better. All they needed to do, as Gina Yashere says, is defend her. And it didn't have to be a weekly defense. It could have been once. And that would have gone a long way for a lot of us that we're watching, a lot of us in the United Kingdom and around the world. Because unfortunately, this whole issue, at the top of, my monologue, I said, it was a tragedy. It became a tragedy because, the whole world was now involved. You've got Hillary Clinton, commenting. The women on The View were actually united for a change in their view about this. You've got everybody making a comment. You've got people going, well, where is the family? What are they doing? And I know that they're, probably the most powerful family on the planet, but they failed her. They really did, unfortunately, sadly. Yes, they've made a statement. It took them a couple of days to come up with a statement. And the statement effectively said, we don't necessarily agree with the version of events. That's me summarizing, by the way. But the long and short of it is that this is a family affair and we're going to resolve it privately. And it begs the question, well, why didn't you say that last year? Why didn't you resolve it privately 2 years ago? Why do we have to wait to get to the point where it's so rotten? The whole world is involved and we say it's a family affair. It's never too late, mind you, to do something. So I welcome the fact that it's a family affair. I wish they could have called that a lot sooner, but it's good that they've called it now. And I hope that now that they've called it, that every single member, all those involved, because the pain is not just a Meghan and Harry pain. Their pain is there, the family pain is also there. So I'm hoping that this truce or this, we're going to work this out privately will mean that, and that no further stories will be leaked to the press, and that they will learn to take action. When I say then, I mean the institution and the family will take action to protect these two individuals. Um, you know, they need it. They need the support. They need the love. They've managed to generate the love of the planet, as it were. And it's such a shame because I think that the family missed out on an opportunity to be able to have their very own superstars that will continue to generate the adulation that they so much need, that they want, that will continue to generate, interest in them and in their being. So it's a pity that they actually couldn't see that and work with that. But as I said earlier, it's all because nobody can shine more than the sovereign. But they haven't realized that you can't force that. That's something that we all decide who we like. We see some, we see their personalities, what we're allowed to see of them, and we make our choice. And so I wish they can, work with some of their own rules to relax their own rules. And I think if they could relax their own rules, they will have better lives because, I mean, there's a lot that has gone on in that family. A lot of them have been through their pains and all, as a sacrifice to that throne. So I think a lot could happen. They need to do so much more. They need to work on that. So I'm hoping, my hope is that they will work through this for themselves as members of the royal family, for Harry and Meghan, and that the lessons that will be learned will be one that can sustain the monarchy. Because if they fail to learn the lesson a second time around, because this is a second time around, like I said, we've seen this with Diana, and they told us they learned, but we're back here. So clearly somebody didn't learn very well. But if they could learn the lessons here and make some adjustment, they, as family members, will be happy. And, we will be happy. I don't think anybody wants to continue to see the hurt that family members go through because, like I said, they're all sacrifices to that throne. And it's sad. It's a tragedy to watch. They may have all the privileges on the planet, but what good is having all the privileges when you're miserable and you're not happy and you can't be who you want to be? I don't know about you, but that doesn't work very well. Not for a lot of people. Your joy is generated from you being able to be you, being able to, come from that place of realness, of, being genuine, or of, attaining the heights and your desires in life. That's what generates your joy. But when you can't be you, it's a miserable place. You know what? I've ranted too much. So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye for tonight. But thank you so much for staying with me. And I am coming back next week with a whole lot more ranting. I may have a guest, but let's wait and see. But I'm certainly going to go through the budget a lot better. Sorry that, I didn't go through it as much as I would have liked it tonight. And the whole Brexit issue. Hopefully, we're not going to have another drama that's going to overtake everything. So once again, like, subscribe, and share. But above all, thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye.